Brendan Carr is one of 5 FCC commissioners, one of 2 Republicans. And something's going on at the FCC this week, that is enormously problematic for conservative talk radio as far as I'm concerned, and it affects a number of stations that currently run my program. Mr. Carr, welcome to the program. I'm raising the issue of what used to be called Entercom, which is now Audacity. They own over 200 stations. Can you tell us what's taking place now?
Yeah, back in March of this year, a George Soros-backed group filed with the FCC to take over those former stations. So it's 200 local radio stations spread across 40 different markets. And earlier this year, it was reported that the FCC was going to approve this transaction without even doing a vote of the commission. And actually, Senator Ted Cruz wrote the FCC a letter and called the current Democrat leadership out for that. And it's been reported now that that decision has been brought up for a commission-level vote. And as you noted, there's 3 Democrats on the commission, 2 Republicans. And the New York Post has a story, Lydia Moynihan, that's reporting that the commission voted 3-2 last Wednesday to approve the transaction. For my part, what I can tell you without, revealing non-public information yet is that I'm a very hard no on this for a pretty simple reason. We have a process that we have to deal with these types of transactions, and the FCC hasn't followed it. Instead, we have fast-tracked this to, in my view, enable this Soros-backed group to get a hold of these stations and get control of them much more quickly than they would have if the FCC followed the normal process.
Now, this is supposed to be an independent agency. It's been around since the 30s. It's involved in a very, very important aspect of American life and lifestyle, the issuing of licenses for broadcasting. People don't realize that while there are radio station owners, the FCC has significant regulatory authority, licensing authority, that stations need to be owned in the public interest. So it has a review process that's been in place for a very long time. And in this case, you have George Soros and his management company that is, as I understand it, correct me if I'm wrong, that now is going to own 40% or the majority of this company, Audacity. And furthermore, under the existing FCC rules, foreign company ownership of U.S. radio stations is not supposed to exceed 25%. So he's got foreign money involved. And there's supposed to be also a national security process, a review process. Am I right about most of this?
Yeah, you're exactly right. So what makes this deal different than a traditional purchase is that the financing that the Soros Group has put together has excessive foreign money involved. So if you have more than 25% foreign ownership, you get taken off the normal review process and you go through a national security review where national security agencies, not the FCC, national security agencies look at where that foreign money is coming from, and they run a 6 month to 1 year process to make sure there's no problem here. So this isn't like the Soroses themselves. This isn't even the Soroses' money. It's that they put a conglomerate together to buy this, where they have admitted to the FCC that there's excessive foreign ownership. What they're saying is, look, give us control of these stations now. We promise to wall off the foreign ownership money for the time being. Then we'll come back to the FCC down the road to run the 6 month to 1 year process. The commission itself has never voted to approve a transaction where we've got the cart before the horse, where we haven't actually gone through that foreign ownership review. Now, is there going to be something nefarious there? I doubt it, but I don't know. I don't know because we're not running the normal process here. We're skipping it.
Well, what's nefarious is you're not running the normal process. That's number one. Number two, these are American radio stations. And now you're going to have a significant amount of foreign money involved in the ownership of American radio stations. And I'm sure the entire purpose is to make sure that foreign influence, among other things, is not affecting local broadcasting, is not affecting, free speech in this country. Now, why are the commissioners, or several of the Democrat commissioners, why are they bending over backwards to do this for the Soros Management Fund before the election?
Well,
what is their explanation?
When I was preparing to come on the show, I looked on X, formerly Twitter, and I saw that just today that Alexander Soros had just posted that he was meeting today with Governor Walz in his New York City home. And what's interesting to me is, a lot of these 200 stations, some of them are just, music or news, but there's a number of conservative outlets that are on there, as you indicated, including your show. I mean, at least 4 stations that I've seen so far carry your show. So if people are out
By
there...
the way, one of them has already canceled my show. We just got notice 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, so Gainesville, Florida, Wichita, Kansas, Philadelphia.
No, Philadelphia, the big one, WPHT.
PHT, yep, that's part of the transaction. And then Spartanburg.
And by the way, PHT, Commissioner, is one of the original stations, WCAU, part of William Paley Broadcasting. I'm from Philadelphia. I know all about the history of it. So that's part of this Audacity transaction.
Yep, you're exactly right. And what's so interesting is the other side of this coin. So when a bunch of conservative buyers wanted to buy some Florida radio stations a year or so ago, the left was up in arms. Democrats, cried out that the FCC had to block the sale to conservative buyers, in the Democrats' words, because they were worried they would influence election outcomes. There was Democrat members of Congress that wrote to cable companies and said, effectively, you need to drop Fox News, OAN, and Newsmax because of the editorial decisions that are being made. A Baltimore prosecutor, a Democrat, called for the FCC to go after a local TV station that was exposing the prosecutor's corruption. And so we very clearly see no hesitation to weaponize government process when it comes to those situations. And yet somehow on this issue, it gets fast-tracked.
Yeah, to me, this is a free speech issue, and this is an attack on conservative talk radio. The left, the Democrats, have sought to compete against conservative talk radio, particularly the big hosts. When there was Rush Limbaugh, Sean Hannity, my show, Bongino, others, we're really the targets here. And so what they're trying to do, notice it's before the election, is to try and get this done. So if they lose the election, they still have these 220 stations. And if they win the election, they've created a precedent. Is there anything Congress can do or any litigator can do? I mean, they're obviously, in my view, they're operating ultra vires. They're operating without any precedent, without any regulatory authority.
Yeah, I mean, look, Congress could step in, but it's difficult. As you know, you need the House, the Senate, and effectively the president. So you got to have a lot of leverage to do that. There is going to be a second bite at this apple. So even under their approach, they have to come back to the FCC within presumably the next 30 or 60 days and run this 3 to 6 month long national security review. So there will be a second bite of the apple here over the next coming months. But it is a challenging situation. You're right. I mean, we're sort of in the midst of this global surge, really, in censorship. And you see the Biden-Harris White House admitting, or effectively admitting, that they've been pressuring social media companies to censor political speech, in my view, in violation of the First Amendment. I mean, we should have a law on the books that says if you're in government, if you're right, left, or center, and you're calling up social media and telling them to suppress posts, the companies should be compelled to publicly and quickly disclose it, because this jawboning and the silencing of political speech we're seeing that's accelerated under Biden-Harris, I think is a real problem. There's a lot of talks about threats to democracy, but free speech is the check on authoritarianism. It's democracy's check on authoritarianism. So we have to return to that.
I mean, the idea that unelected 3 Democrat commissioners, what will be a 3-2 vote on this independent agency, which is really supposed to be as objective as possible. But look, I'm not a Pollyanna. I didn't fall off the tuna boat yesterday. I get it. But this is blatant. This is brazen. This is in your face. This is, the election's coming up. We're going to do this whether you like it or not. And it isn't amazing to you, Commissioner, that so much of the mass media just blow it off and completely ignore it. I mean, there's some pockets here and there. But I just told you right now, we just got notice. I'm from Philadelphia. I won't be on that station. Now, I'm not worried about it. I have a podcast or alternatives there that we're going to use. And we, Cumulus Westwood One is a very, very big media corporation. And we have some very interesting initiatives that we're going to deal with in a number of these metropolitan areas. But that's not my point. My point is the idea that a George Soros, a big Democrat, the sugar daddy for the Democrat Party, can muscle his way in, effectively buy the FCC, decide who's going to own what of these 220 stations and who's going to be aired, that's pretty sickening, don't you think?
I think we need to return power back to Congress. You mentioned, obviously the FCC where I work, but there's, hundreds, if not thousands, of this alphabet soup of agencies that are out there, the administrative state. And Democrats have been in charge of the administrative state for 12 of the last 16 years. So much of your daily life, in the life of small businesses, is now governed by these unelected agencies. And we do have a shot here right now. There's some new Supreme Court precedents, getting rid of Chevron. Effectively, that they're getting rid of deference to these agencies and saying, look, the Constitution is pretty straightforward. Congress is the one that's supposed to pass these laws. And right now, the people decided to have a divided Congress. So Congress isn't getting a lot done. And that's the way that people wanted. And yet these agencies, like the one I work at, are churning out thousands and thousands of regulations that disrupt your daily life without people knowing who we are or voting for us. So I think we've got to get the power back to Congress.
In many ways, Commissioner, I think this isn't about building a robust, number of AM radio stations, because AM radio is fighting for its survival right now. I think this is just a way of pushing and silencing voices. And I think technology helps us too, because podcasting is exploding. You don't need a FCC license to be a podcaster. So I think what's happening here, whether it's Soros or other owners or something of that sort, in the end, they're going to destroy their own industry, and they're going to push more and more and more and more people into sort of these independent podcasts and other platforms, don't you think?
I've been at the FCC for almost 12 years, a commissioner for 7. And I can tell you, people with billions and billions of dollars are not investing in local radio stations to try to turn a profit. I wish it were otherwise, but the industry is not kicking off profits. So anybody that's spending that much money in this type of sector either sees something economically that I haven't seen, or their purpose here is not, simply to use these as an investment to make money. There is a different motive at play here.
Mm-hmm. So they're fast-tracking a process that's never been fast-tracked since there's been a process. They're doing it for Soros. He will acquire 220 radio stations that reach 165 million Americans. He will do it through the Soros Management Fund, which includes a significant amount of investment from foreign monies. And they will have control over these stations and these formats. Is that about right?
Yeah, but my guess is that it will, be a final deal and have the reins of those stations in the coming weeks.
Well, it's going to be up to the audience to abandon stations like this, as far as I'm concerned. That's the only way. Mr. Commissioner, I want to thank you very much for what you've done and what you're trying to do, and we'd like to bring you back as this moves into the final stage, Brendan Carr, if that's okay with you.
Yep, always glad to do it. Great to join you.
All right, God bless, and my best to you. There you go, America. Or what's left of America.